Hi everyone, Craig here from GT. Very cold, wet, windy day outside in Cape Town, but we're here in our offices and we're going to be talking a little bit about MCP. And some of you might go, well, what is MCP? I'm sure most of you have been in the scenario where you're sitting in a board meeting, management meeting, and someone says, we need to start driving AI into our business and we need to incorporate our own internal documentation. Now, you don't want to ground the data into an LLM, and you most certainly don't want to be taking your data and sending it to a public LLM that's using that data in order to enrich its own sources of data. So that's where your model context protocol comes in, which is your MCP. It's an open standard for how AI applications interact with external tools and data. So think about having your external data sitting in a database somewhere or on a website or on a cloud service, and you want to interact with that data. And it might not just be reading the data. For RAG, as an example, it might be that you want to interact by adding data as part of your process as well. Obviously, that becomes very difficult for an agent if they don't know about the systems. And that's where MCP comes in. Because it's standardized, it means that your LLM can quite easily interact with that data, irrespective of what LLM it is. You could be using ChatGPT, you could be using Copilot, you could be using any type of application, and the information that you're interacting with can come from various sources. That makes that AI so much more powerful because it understands the data that you're passing it using the MCP, and it understands what its limits are in terms of updating, in terms of security and all of the rest. So let's jump into a MCP example. Today, we're going to be looking at something close to our heart. We utilize the Zoho quite extensively for CRM, for projects, for our support desk. And we're going to look at an MCP written specifically for Zoho, where we can start interacting with the data. And we'll jump straight into that now, utilizing Copilot. So how do we actually get this to run? Well, we've got the server component that we could be running locally. Now, that can work for most people if, for instance, they are utilizing that AI tool specifically on their machine. So this one as an example, the server, we've deployed a manager that will start this process, and that runs on my machine. So when we kick that off, you'll see it's applying some actions, and it has generated an endpoint on my machine, and I can utilize that endpoint. I can install it onto Anthropic or ChatGPT or something of the sort. But if we are wanting to deploy this onto a server that everyone can use, well, why not use Azure Functions? And you'd use the exact same code, running it on Azure Functions, deploy it, and that creates an endpoint on Azure Functions that you can then tie into your AI agent. So let's jump across and actually have a look at how that is working with our AI agent in our CRM example. Well, I'm sorry to tell all you business users, but we're going to get a little bit technical now. I'm actually going to show you how an MCP can get set up. Now remember that the MCP needs to interact with your data in a standardized fashion. I've got one here that we are utilizing for Zoho. And in terms of it, we are interacting with the data using JavaScript. And we've built our server using JavaScript here with a number of different libraries, including Express, Axios, body parsers, cores, .env, etc. Now, the idea behind this is firstly to pass through some information around credentials. So here we're putting in environmental variables around client IDs, secrets, tokens, etc. My marketing team is going to love me because I'm not actually showing our tokens this time, which is normally my trick and requiring us to change a whole bunch of security post recording. But this time, I'm just going to use environmental variables. And with those variables, we go through to account Zoho and authenticate using the client ID and your refresher token. Now, is this the same for everything or most things? In terms of Zoho, they've got a development console where you can go and register your application. They will give you a client ID and a secret, and you can get some code to generate a refresh token, and that allows you to authenticate against the data. Once we've got the access token, we can then start calling information by passing through the access token and then generating responses from endpoints in Zoho. So let's have a look at some of the examples of endpoints that we've got here. Things like API modules, or what modules are available for us to utilize. We've got deals. So give me all of the open deals within Zoho CRM. Kind of useful when you're looking at CRM data. Or overdue deals. Quite importantly there, the difference between open and overdue, the ones you should be chasing quite hard because there's an expectation that they should have closed already. So as you can see, there's quite basic calls going out to Zoho, passing through the API to the endpoint, and then returning that data to our agentic agent in the background. Now, the format that we've used here, you can follow this with any of your MCPs and to any source data. Obviously, the calls themselves are going to change. These are the specific calls for Zoho. Yours will have whatever API calls you might have for your system. Now, with that line of business application, as mentioned, you might be getting data or you might be pushing data back, such as posting. And there you need to be quite specific around security, who's allowed to push data back, etc. Because as soon as you make this available within your agentic agent and you're allowing push of data, your data with any finger troubles or someone getting hold of this surreptitiously to go mess with your data could be a problem. So you always need to be thinking about security in these cases. So ours, you could run it locally. So in the case of ours, we've got a package manager where you can go and kick off and start the server. It then goes, authenticates, does everything that it needs to, and then gets the server running. But what happens when you already have that loaded or you're not using it on your local machine? Well, then you need to generate a Azure function, as an example, that kicks off the same code where your server is running constantly. And then on your agentic agent side, connect to that data using that MCP. Let's take a look now at ways that we can pull data from a system like Zoho and represent it in our agentic agent. So over here, we've got a Zoho CRM agent. Now, the idea behind this is to replace your sales manager. Not really replace them, but rather take away an onerous task that they are doing on a daily basis and automating that task. What we're talking about here is proactive agents or autonomous agents that are running on their own. They don't require you to go and fill in questions. All they're looking for is a trigger to kick off, and in our case, it kicks off on a daily basis, goes and gets the information from Zoho and then presents it to the salesperson, telling them what they need to do. So in our case, this agent is a salesperson that links into Zoho CRM. It receives data such as the deal owner, what the probability of the deal is, closing dates, creation times, etc. Once it's got all of that data, it composes a table where it looks at things like a deal overview, the key questions, last notes, etc. But quite importantly, it's using our knowledge base. So here it uses a sales playbook that we've created internally and attaching that to the data that we're pulling from Zoho CRM to give instructions to the salesperson. So the entire point here is for the account manager who used to have a 2-hour meeting every day with the sales manager, updating CRM, going through the next steps, etc. We've removed that entirely. Now, the agent sits, goes through all of the deals within CRM, then calls up the owner of that deal and tells them exactly what they need to do, but it uses our own internal process, our sales playbook, in order to generate the responses, and that makes it more intelligent and dynamic than just a workflow. A workflow, you could do this with a whole bunch of its and buts, but you can't do that analysis without utilizing the AI tool. So in this case, pulling that data together, creating all of the statuses, and then responding with an email to our agent. What are some of the things that we've built into this agent? Well, we're looking at a sales process document sitting within SharePoint, and that is our sales process. One of our biggest problems with AI agents is that when we are asking the agent questions, what we find, people in the market are not really good at prompting. And that's where these autonomous agents become quite useful, in that you can predefine what the prompts are. And that's my instructions up at the top. That means that as an individual, I don't need to ask the right question. It's already created for me. Someone with a great brain in terms of creating a prompt can do that through Copilot Studio, and every time I'm going to get a consistent answer. Just a trick there. If you want a better way to prompt an agentic agent, ask it what you should prompt. So define exactly what it is that you're trying to achieve, and it will give you the best response as to what prompt you should be using. You can obviously refine that and get it right down to the details that you want. The second area that we have problems with is hallucinations. We do not want data coming in and out of our environment that is incorrect, that is not based on exactly what we're trying to achieve. So in this case, we turn off the LLM functionality. We only use that sales process playbook as inputs to the agent, which means that it cannot hallucinate. It's only got that one piece of information that it is now tying into our Zoho CRM actions. We've also got our tools, and this used to be called actions. And here we can send an email using a send email action, or if we wanted to tie this into another process, we could also call a flow. Beautiful thing around the tools is the ability to call many different actions that look just like Power Automate actions, because guess what? They are Power Automate actions. The same with your triggers. So your tools and triggers, very similar. Your trigger is a starting action. So how does this get kicked off? In our case, this is run on a timely basis. So every morning it'll kick off and go through the process, and then use that action to send off an email or write to a Teams message, etc. So let's have a look at this run. I haven't published this as our demo option, but you'll notice that there's a little test trigger here, which is great. I can kick this off whenever I want to. Behind the scenes of the trigger, what you'll notice is it actually calls Power Automate. So Power Automate is triggering this whole process and returning us data. So in terms of that, I'm going to click on the test trigger. I'm going to run one. And what's beautiful in terms of the testing is you can see everything that's happening within Copilot Studio. So here, the trigger is kicked off and it's gone to get deal information. Now, those of you that are not technically inclined will hate me, because when I open this up, you'll see information that's written in a JSON format. And we've got the ID of our deal. We've got who the owner is. We've got things like the probabilities, the created dates, etc. And on the side, it's showing us our activities. So here we can see the send an email, we can see send a custom notification. That was the call to flow. Whereas send the email, you can see here that it's sending an email to me because I've configured it to do that with some body of the email in there with a deal assessment, exactly what this deal is about. So what does that look like when it arrives at my inbox? Well, here we've got the email. This is for a deal that was already closed. So we can see that the status is closed one, the probability and when the last activity was. Now, this isn't anything new in terms of a workflow. If we asked the API to give me back a deal and send me very specific information like the status and the dates, well, that we would expect. So the current status and risk, very low there, low hanging fruit, because that would be a normal workflow component. But if you look at the next section, this is where an assessment is done. It's gone and spoken to our sales process document, and it's identified that we've got all of these pieces of information that need to be checked, like this deal's been closed successfully, but there's no requirements documentation. So maybe that's a step that we've missed. There is budget. The timeline for the implementation is not specified. So whilst as a salesperson, I might have closed this deal, if my operations team hasn't kicked it off, well, there's a problem there, and it's something that I might need to look at. And it also then goes into my action steps. These are the next action steps. It's got a link to the deal. It's even got a nice little quote at the end there. So it's utilizing the AI component to do that assessment. But quite importantly, where's it getting all of the static data from? Well, it's getting that from Zoho using our MCP. So whilst we are questioning information from Zoho, the AI understands that this is an MCP behind the scenes. It needs to go and get information like get deal information. It's got that deal information based off a deal code, and now it's sending that back to me after it's been analyzed through my sales process. So that is actually the use case that we would be using our MCP for. Our Zoho data doesn't sit in the Microsoft stack. It doesn't sit as part of our M365 instance, so I can't just ask these questions out of Copilot per se. I need that MCP to be able to identify the information in Zoho and send that back to me. Hopefully that opens up a world of ideas in terms of you, your business, and how you would get data into your agentic agent so that you can save a lot of time. Thinking about this, we're saving a 2-hour meeting every day. We're also saving a whole lot of analysis that needs to take place to identify the next steps for everything in our CRM. So very easy way to start interacting with your data and utilizing AI for a powerful purpose and building a used case. And in this case, removing overheads, really improving our productivity, which is what we want to do with AI. Thank you.